Aloha and welcome to uh, Module 12, Advanced HTML Forms. This is not going to be so much of a lecture as it is a bunch of demonstration of examples and further elaborations on use of functions and advanced HTML forms processing. So you definitely want to get the presentation slides and open them up and have them available because we're going to use a lot of code from this. So follow along with me. Make sure that you have your NetBeans running and that you have your Smartphone Products 5 practice WOD completed because we'll also use that for some examples. So to get started, let's just create well, let's take a look at what we got here. So more on forms processing. So far with forms, we've looked at basic HTML input types like text, password, hidden, and submit. And there are others like radio, checkbox, and reset. You could take a look at what those do. Essentially, all of these provide different behavior in terms of input from the user, but they are processed all the same way by anything that has a name with one of these HTML form elements becomes a key in the $_post or $_get array for the target of the form that they're in. We also looked at some compound types like select, text array, and list box. These also are processed very similarly, except for they're just a little bit more complicated. There are other kinds of HTML form types that you could use. There's going to be a reading on DHTML or HTML5 form elements that extend some of these that you might want to take a look at so that you're familiar with it. But these are the basics, and they're all the same. Okay, let's start with an example. Let's go and open up. You might want to keep this open here. Let's just go open up our NetBeans and let's start a new project. And let's say that this project is going to be a login select. Let's just say login select. And we're going to want that to be our local website or built in as you prefer. And then hit finish. Okay. So let's just make sure things are running. So we'll say echo quote hello, and we'll save that, set that to be our Chrome browser, and there we go. We got hello. Okay. So what we'd like to do here is we're going to create a login form that will enable the user to select their username from a pull-down list and then process the login by checking to see if the password matches one that's stored in an array. So this is a quite common thing to do. Let's see how we can do forms processing with that, and then we will extend it to see how we can use functions to make this more readable and convenient. Now, thereby we'll start to understand a little bit more about the purpose of functions. So I'm going to start out by just making some comments. I'm going to start out by some comments just to kind of guide what we need to do. So first what we want to do is check if, we'll make this a self-processing page. So we're going to start out by, how about this? Display login form, and what we want to do is display that login form, and then as the user hits login, the login button, they select their thing here. It's going to, in the login form, it's going to have a show login select options. And of course, get a password too. Get password. Now, this is all going to be in a form, and we're going to, if the form is submitted, we're going to make this a self-processing form. You don't have to, but let's just try that. And what we're going to need to do is first check that am I in the displaying to allow the user to log in, or am I checking that? And I have to check before I display the login, because if they submitted the login form, I don't want to display a login while I'm processing the input. In other words, if the person is already logged in, it should tell them that they're logged in. So check if processing login. If so, show logged in if login info is valid. Okay, so one of the most common questions I get in beginning programming is towards the middle or 3/4 of the way through the semester. That's like, how do I put it all together? It's like, I understand the syntax, I understand the commands, I don't know how to write my own application from beginning. I wouldn't know where to start. So one way to start is to understand what you want and then make notes like this as kind of an outline to show that what you need to do and the sort of the logic without having to worry about how to do it. So we're going to say check if processing login, if so, show logged in if login is valid, and if not processing, then show form, login form. So what this is going to do is see if I'm processing a login. If I'm not, just show the login form. Which one? This one here. Okay. Login, I guess. And what I want to do is, if I'm checking my login form over here, so this is going to be all inside here. That if checking the processing, check the login form, display the login here. So this is inside. I'm going to move that over like that to show that it's inside. If login info is valid, show logged in, otherwise show login form. So now you see that the logic of this is I'm going to have to show the login form in two different places. First, if I'm not processing a login, I immediately need to show the login form so that you can enter. If they hit login and it's processing, it's going to check to see if the login information is okay. If it's not okay, it's going to say incorrect login, try again, and show the login form. If it is okay, show them it's logged in. So I'm actually going to need the code in a couple of different places. Let's see if I can do this efficiently. So the first thing to do is I also need user information here. Need some user information. Now to save some time, I already got that here. So it's I'm going to just grab this login information called usernames. So I'm going to copy like that and go back to here and paste that there like that. And then I will format this to make it look better. Oops. I think I want to undo that. Okay, I'll format that later. So this is the user. Now all this is a simple it's an associative array called usernames, and it just associates a username as the key with the password as a value. So if I want to know which password goes with each username, I just ask for the username in the array usernames, and then it gives me the password. So it's very easy to look things up. I don't have to search for it. Okay. Now I'm going to want to display by login information. So there's this other page here that says display login information. Now it's in a form, but let's just go grab this just to save some time so that I don't have to redo this. So I'm going to copy that and I'm going to have to display the login form. So that's right here. So login form, the first thing I notice is this is in PHP, so I'm going to close my PHP, and then form action PHP echo. Okay, $_PHP self makes it a self-processing form, right? And put a semicolon there, although it's not necessary. Method with the post method. Select username, and now it's going to use this for each users in, well, this is going to be called username, so let's copy that and make that username for each usernames as user pass. So it's going to go get Mo and Stooge, and it's going to print Mo as an option for my select box, which is called username. So this is going to create a select box with all the usernames, which are the keys in this array. Okay, then I have a password input box, and then I have a submit called value login button. Okay, that's all done there, and I think this is the login select option. So that's this stuff right here, right? So showing login select options and getting the password. That's right there. So I'm not going to put that in as a comment. That's pretty easy. Okay, so this is some in HTML, some in PHP. I'm using the taking advantage that my information for the usernames are in this user array and to print them all out. So let's save that. Let's do a format like that so I can see what's going on better. Okay. At this point, I should be able to see the login form, so I'm going to go test that out by seeing, there it is. See, Mo, there it is, the text box. See, Mo, Larry, Curly. That corresponds to that key, and that key. It's getting it from this loop here that goes through the array, and it inputs a password box. Now it's a self-processing form, so if I hit this, it just goes back to myself, so nothing special. It hasn't processed it at all. What I need to do now is check to see if I'm processing a login. If so, show logged in if the information is valid. If not, show the processing. So what I'm going to do here is I need an if. So if array key exists, which array? Well, I need to look for the submit button, right? That means that somebody hit the login button, right? And I'm going to look for it in $_post. So if submit button is a key in $_post, it means somebody hit that, and I'm now processing a login. In fact, so let's see. So that's going to be all between here and here. I have an error, it looks like. Oh, looks like I put an extra one. I didn't need that. Let's take that out. Now it says if this key doesn't exist in this array, then what I need to do is print the login form, right? If not processing, show the login form. So that's this part right here. I'll make that a comment right there, and that should be showing everything like that. So let's see if that works. And what I want to do is I'm going to also put at the top here, it's always a good idea when you're processing form to var dump $_post. And that's so you can see what's in there. You'll notice that it keeps asking me to resubmit the form, and that's because the form data was already there, and you can't start fresh. So you notice that it says Mo, TTT was my password, submit button was logging because I pressed the login button. If I wanted to start out fresh without having to resubmit, so if I refresh here, it says it wants to confirm resubmission. If I want to start without any form data, then a little trick is you could take the P off the end of the URL, hit enter. It says object not found. That's fine. And then go put the P back in, and you'll see that it starts out fresh. See how my array is empty? There's no data being submitted. Okay, so now I can pick Larry, and I can hit XXX and hit on that login, and you'll see now the post array has Larry, which is from the select box down here. Password XXX, that came from my password thing here, and then submit button whose value is login is right there. But of course I didn't do anything. It just switches between displaying a login form and not displaying a login form. So if I hit the submit button, no display. Okay, let's go back and make that full. So like so. So what I need to do is check to see if the login data is valid. So the way I do that is just another if statement. Okay. So I'll just check that if. Now what I want to do is I'm going to go get. So what do I have here? I have the username MoLarryCurly. I got a password. What I want to do is get that username in this array, get the password that's stored, and compare it to the password that's there. So that's how I'm going to process the login to see if the user selected the right password. So what I'm going to do is check if dollar usernames, right, dollar underscore post quote. Now what that's going to be username. In other words, whichever the user selected here is going to be dollar underscore post username. So it's going to be Mo, Larry, or Curly. That becomes a key for this array here, Mo, Larry, or Curly. So usernames is going to give me Stooge1, Stooge2, or Stooge3. It's going to give me the password. So this is checking the password. I want to see if it's equal to what was entered by the user, dollar underscore post quote password, right? So in other words, that's this right here, whatever the user entered as the password. So I'm checking if the password stored for the selected username, that's this, is equal to the password that they entered. If it is, then I want to just print, I'll just say print I want to say dollar, I want to print the username, that was whoever logged in, right? So that's Mo, Larry, Curly is now logged in. Okay? Ooh, that should not be, all this needs to be in curly braces, not that part right there. Okay? And then I'm probably just going to want to exit, quit the program, because I'm logged in, and that's all I want to do. Now, what happens if the user is not logged in? Let's see. Let's try this now. So if I go Mo and I hit, Mo has password Stooge1, right? STOOGE1, login. And now you see it says Mo is now logged in because what I entered here in the password field matched what was stored in the array. The key was Mo because that's what I selected in my pull down. Now what I want to do is, well, what happens if I use the wrong password? Say Mo is XXX. It does nothing. So what I want it to do is I want it to say, oh, that was incorrect, try again. So I'll put an else here. So this is right here. You can make a little note, says, you know, login incorrect, try again. So now I'm going to just print, I'll just copy this, and I'll say incorrect password for this username. Please try again. And I'll put a BR here. And now what I need it to do is I need it to reprint the form. So let's see if this works. See, now it says incorrect password. Ooh, I spelled password wrong. Okay, incorrect password for Mo, please try again. And again, that's, it will work if I say Stooge1. Let's try another password. Let's try Curly, who's Stooge3. Stooge3. Okay, Curly's now logged in, but if I went back here and I tried Curly with XXX, incorrect password Curly. I mean, what I needed to do is reprint this login form. How do I do that? Well, I'm over here, unfortunately, right? So how do I make it go into this else? See how the problem is that we have an if else here, so that switches between logging in and not logging in. So this is logging in if I didn't hit the submit button. This is checking if I hit the submit button. How do I make it go down to here? Now, there are a couple of tricky ways to do this. One way to do it is, instead of using if and else, I could use a switch statement. So I could use a switch statement that falls through here. Or I can use an else if. Else if I could see that, no, not an else if, that wouldn't work. I could use another if statement here. I could use an if array key exists, or I find that I'm an incorrect password here, or I could put like a flag in here that says the password is incorrect. That's, again, the logic is complicated. A simpler thing to do would just be to reprint the form right here. So here we go. Let's take the form. It's right there, like so, right? All I need is the form. So I'll copy that, and let's see here. Copy that, and I'll just make it reprint the form. So I got to close PHP, right? I got to open PHP again, and then I'll copy my form in between there. Let's format that to make it look nicer and save it. And here we go. So we have Mo, Larry, Curly. So Mo, XXX, bad password. It says incorrect password for Mo, please try again. There it is. Now if I say Mo Stooge1, I'm logged in. Okay, so everything looks good here. The problem is that this code is very difficult to read. You can see that I have this complicated logic for switching between things, and I have redundant code where I'm printing the form essentially twice, and I've doubled the amount of code that I needed, and it's hard for me to read. So one way that you can deal with this is that when you have duplicated code, that's a great indicator that a function could be useful here. So let's create a function that will just print the form. So instead of printing it here and then printing it there, which is the exact same code, I'm going to take this and just replace it. I'm going to replace this with, in fact, here, I'll just take this whole thing. I'm going to replace this with a function. I'm just going to make a function that says, call it display login. Okay, and the display login is going to need to display the login. Since I'm printing out the users, it's going to need the information for the users, which is usernames. So I'm going to pass it the username so it can put it in that pull down for me, right? And let's just go down here and create our function. I'll just open up PHP here, close PHP. You can define a function anywhere you want, right? And so I'll call this function display login and users array. So it needs a users array to do its work, and when I'm done here, that defines my function. So my function does all that stuff. Notice that I can close PHP here and just do a bunch of stuff like that. Now for users array, I don't need usernames. Usernames was inside, is local to something outside the function. So I'm passing it in, so I can't use the usernames that's defined up here, right? I have to pass it in. I'm passing in under users array. There it is. Passing it under users name. So this needs to be the parameter users array, like this. Let's see if this works. Okay, so I'll continue, and let's start over from the beginning. Take my P out, put the P back in, and I have Mo XXX Oops, incorrect password for Mo. Please try again. Looks like display login. Call the undefined function. Display login. Did I spell it wrong? I should probably display login. Copy. Oh, yeah, I spelled it wrong. See, I called diaplay. So I'm going to copy and paste that. Let's try that again. Resubmit. There, now it's working. And now if I do STOOG1, and now Mo is logged in. By the way, well, we'll look at that in a minute. So now that I have the display login function and it works over here, there's no reason why I couldn't do the same for here. So this is just the display login function right there. Just the same darn thing. Let's reformat. There. Okay, so save that, run it. Whoops. Let's start with the P here. Take the P out like that. Syntax error, login select at line 67. It looks like I made a mistake. This is an else. Oh yeah, I have some extra junk here. I don't need this. I just need display login like that. Okay, let's reformat that. That looks a little nicer. And now this one needs to be closing PHP like that so I can finish the body in HTML. Okay, gets a little tricky with all these things, but let's see. So Mo, XXX, login, not right, Stooge, 1, correct. Now it's logged in. Okay, good. So everything is working nicely. I don't need my var dump anymore. I can just comment that out. And that way I don't get the junk up there. And now I've got my login program, right? But I want you to appreciate how nice the function makes the code. So notice that it's very easy. Here's where my information is. Here's where it checks the processing. If array key exists, do this. That's a little complicated. But then it says else display the login. So if the login is incorrect, display the login. If I'm not logging in because I haven't username, display the login. And so this code is much easier to read. It's much shorter, much easier to read. If I have to do anything with the login, I just go down here into the display login function and change that. By the way, the nice thing about using the array and this submit using the for each to do the options here is it certainly makes it easy to add new users or delete users or change their information. All I need to do is change it in here. So maybe I could add Shemp as the Stooge number 4 like that, and you'll see that Shemp automatically appears, okay, with password Stooge 4. So this is a nice username password deal that you can use. Okay, so how can we extend this even further? Well, another thing is that so we've reduced the redundancy for the display login by using a display login function. That was helpful. Made it easier to read, more extendable, easier to maintain. Another thing that's kind of complicated is this username password check. I don't really know what it's doing there, and it might be that I need a more sophisticated validation for the login. So why don't I create a function to do that too? And I've conveniently made that possible. I made a process login function. So let's just take that code that processes the login and make that into a function. So I'm going to copy that here, and let's just put this over here. It doesn't matter. Let's just do it right there. Okay, so I've added another function. Let's format this nicely. Okay, so there's a function called process login here, and we're going to use process login, which is going to take a bunch of users also. And it's just taking that code that says get the password for that users in the users array and check to see if it was entered from what was posted. Return true or false. So it's a Boolean function. And so we're going to make this simpler by putting this right here. So we're going to say if this process login, what do we want to do? Well, process login requires a username usernames array because it's going to get the password from the username out of it because it's all local to that. So if process usernames, so this is going to return true or false. I could say equals true here, but that's kind of redundant because process login returns a true or false. Actually, the better name for this function should be something like, is login valid. So I might change this to is login valid just because it's a better name for it. And so I'm going to change that to is login valid. And I don't need this equals true, although for clarity I might want to put it in there. And now I run this. Let's see if this is working. So Mo, I'll try curly here, XXX, that's not valid, incorrect. And I'll go back to curly here, and he is spelled STOOG3, and he is valid. There we go, curly logged in. So there you have it. Using functions to process the login, using a function to display the login makes the code easier to read, easier to maintain, easier to extend, reduces redundant code. So that's a good use for functions here. And you can see if I need to mess about, if anything about the function, anything that has to do with the login, I can ignore all this stuff and go right down to the display login function. Anything about processing the login, I can check here. I can ignore all this logic here. So that's the benefit of that. When you are processing HTML forms, just make sure that when you use form attributes or attributes in your HTML, make sure you use single or double quotes inside or outside to group things. What I mean by that is, for example, where is the self-processing form? See how it says form action equals this? So it's echoing out $_server PHP self. Now the problem is that the name of the file might have a space in it. If it has a space in it, then HTML is going to take that action and split it into two parts between the spaces. If I didn't have these quotes here, because I have these quotes here, now I can group them together, and it will use that space. This could have just as easily been single quotes like this, and then take advantage of when you're printing things out to HTML that if you're using double quotes for PHP, you can use single quotes for HTML, or vice versa. It doesn't really matter. You can mix the two. Take advantage of PHP for using for, while, or for each to generate multiple elements. You see that was done here in using this for each element of the user's array that was passed in. It's printing an option, and that gives us that really nifty curly Mo Larry Shemp. So you can see how useful that was for able to modify the array and modifies the login directly. So how would I validate form data? So we already looked at example of sort of validating things. Let's just say that I want to validate a price for something. So there's not just validating a login. You can use functions to help validate multiple different things. And because validation can be a little complicated, like if I'm validating a price, the price is not supposed to be negative. It's supposed to be a numerical value. And I also need to have only 2 decimal places, otherwise it's not a price. So it's sometimes useful to make a function to do this because it might need to be done in multiple places. Now, HTML5 actually enables you, and JavaScript enables you to validate data at the form itself on the client. But this is going to enable me to validate the data on the server. And again, there's various reasons why you might do one versus the other, or even both. So let's just take this function here, okay, and see how we're going to use it. So let's just modify our program here, and what did I call this? I call this login. Let's create a new project. I like this one, so I don't want to delete it. So I'm going to create a new one. I'll call this validation play. And again, I want that to be my local web server. Finishing that up there. And I'm going to put my code right there like that. So, whoops, it didn't get my there. And format. Excellent. Okay, so I have this function that's called validate price. And we'll see it's a little different than what you're used to. Let's see how we might use that. Let's go take the form from the previous example, which was login stooge, right? So let's go to login stooge. Actually, I have it right here. I'm going to get rid of process and index and that and that. I got too many windows open. Too many windows. Okay, there. So here is login stooge. I'm going to steal the form that it uses. Copy that. And let's just put that up here under the body. Okay, make this a self-processing form. And I don't want a login set of options. I'm just going to make this not a select form, but I'm just going to print out, something like, whoops, I'm going to delete this here, like so. Oops, oops, oops. There, delete. I'm going to say input a price. And I don't want that to be a password box. It should just be I don't want that to be a password box. I'm going to make that a plain text box. And the name is price text box. So I've got price text box, and I'll make this login button now a check price. So let's see what this looks like. I'm going to set this to be NetBeans Connect, run it, and there it is. Input a price, check price. It's a self-processing form. Right now it doesn't do anything. I'm going to probably want put my PHP, right, var dump $_post. I'll put that back there so I can see what's in there. Save that like so, and then I'll put one whatever in there, and you can see check price. Now you see price text box has what I entered, submit price, check price. That's fine. So now what I want to do is check to see if this is set with something. If this is set with something, I'm just going to check to see if it's a valid price. How would I going to do that? I'm going to use the validate price. So let's have it print out afterwards. We'll have it print out afterwards. Okay, we'll just say under here, it doesn't need to be in the form, so I'm going to do it after the form here. Not input anything. I'm going to say if now wait, how does this work? If I'm looking at validate price, now validate price takes a value and sees to see whether it's valid price. It creates an array called errors, and it starts out as an empty array. If it has any errors in it, it's going to give a key for that error and a string with a message for that error, and put it in that array. So I can get all the possible errors for this at once, and then returns the errors array. If none of these things are true, it has no errors, then the error array is empty. So what I'm going to check to say is if this is empty, what do I want to see if it's empty? Well, the first thing to do is go get the errors array. So I'm just going to say errs equals validate price. Validate price. What price? I want to validate $_post quote price text box. Okay, and you'll see I'm going to get a little error, a warning at least. So if that error array is empty, and again, this is just one way to do this. If that error array is empty, then let's just print out actually, you know what I'll do? I got a better idea. I'm not even going to check to see if it's empty, because if it's empty, I'm just going to do a for each. For each $ers as $error and error message, right? So I'm going to create this thing, a little loop that goes through each error in the error array. And it's just going to print it out. Now, if it's empty, this loop just won't do anything. So I don't even need to check. So I'm just going to make it print out. Print quote dollar error. Let's see. Error. Error. Dollar error. This is just telling me the index or the label for this, not number, not dollar, not negative, if it exists. And then here's the message, error message. Just make it print the error message, and we'll do a BR. In fact, you know what? We'll make it font red just for fun. In fact, I don't even need to do that there. I'll make the error message. I'll just do this here. I'll say print quote font style equals double quote color red, just to make it more noticeable. Okay, and then at the end of the thing here, I don't need this to be red anymore. So all these error messages are going to be red. So let's see if this works. Error, not dollar, not a dollar amount. Okay, and that's because there's nothing there. Hey, just for fun, why don't we make this, put a quote on here. We'll do a backslash quote like this and a backslash quote like that, so it'll put it in quotes. There, not a dollar amount. In fact, if you want, you could even make this all uppercase or something like that. Now let's see if I put 1, 2, 3 here, check price, nothing. Why? Because it got the validate price from there, and it went through all these things, and it returned the error array. The error array started out as empty. It returned it, so errors had nothing in it, so nothing went through this loop, nothing printed. What if I make it minus 1.2345? I should get a couple of errors. It says error, not a dollar amount, true, and error, not non-negative, price cannot be negative. So you see how I'm making the errors. The only thing that I don't like here is that when I first start, here, it's saying that there is undefined index price text box. See how this, because when I first check the run the program here, the $_post is empty, and here I'm asking to validate, right, the price text box, which doesn't exist. There's a quick way to get rid of that. You could check to see if array key exists or if it's set, but a quick way, if it doesn't matter, is just to put the @ sign in front of things. If you put the @ sign in front of this stuff, it's not going to do anything. It's going to suppress the warning. But the problem is, it's still checking to see if it's a valid price. So actually, I don't want it to check at all. So in this case, I don't want to use the @ sign. I probably should check only if price text box is set. So I'm going to just look at that, and I'm going to say if is set. So only if I'm set do I want to check. And let's format things nicely, save it. And I got a syntax error here. Why do I got a syntax error there? If is set price text box. I forgot my square bracket there. Okay, there, back to that. And now you see I don't have that problem anymore. And if I put some numeric in there, it says error, not a number. Okay, good. And again, I put the var dump at the top here just so I can see what I put in there. In fact, DDFF is not numeric. Okay, so that's how I can use validate price for a validation, and I might want to do this in multiple places, so it's a good use of a function. Also, if I need to check any additional validations, I only have to go to the function itself. Now, another common thing to do is when I use validated price is to set it to global. So it's so common. The problem is that let's take a look at what I'm doing. Right now what I'm doing is I'm validating a price, and it's going to this function, and it's creating this array of errors and then returning it, which I go get and then I use. It's so common to accumulate errors from different validations that what you might want to do is make the errors array global. And that'll have the upshot that if I have other validations, like not just validate price, but other things that validate, I can throw those errors into the global array and then print all the errors out at once or use them all at once. So a little trick would be to, instead of saying is set errors equals array like this, let's just change this to global dollar errors. So if I make errors now global, okay, then I don't have to pass back errors anymore. And now it's just going to be stored directly in this errors array that's shared inside and outside the function. So I take this out like that and make this errors like that. Okay, now I might need to check more particular that if I'm printing these errors, I'm printing out numeric ones for the price. So let's see if this works. And I hit a continue here, and you notice that let's just start over again. Take the P out, put the P back in. Nothing, blah, blah, blah. Error not numeric, -1, 2, 3, like so. And you see that my errors work just the same now with the global array than with passing it back and forth. And again, the value of this is that I can have multiple validate functions that all use the error array and put all the errors in one array and then decide what to do with them, where to print them, etc. For example, I'm printing these things after. I might want to print them before. So, okay, so let's go take a look at exercise 1. We'll do that in class. It says both do exercise 1. One of the things about validation that's a little tricky is that validation about a form element is that when you use a form, all the form data in inputs, for example, are always passed into $_post or $_get as strings. So the problem is, of course, that if I might need to check that my value is actually a number, for example, but it's always going to come in as a string. Now, usually PHP will convert things properly, but they might not. So you sometimes have to check to see whether something really is an integer or not just a number, but is actually a particular kind of number or an integer. And you can use things like C-type digit. The reason why like isInt won't work is that this actually will convert the value a, right, into a from the string. It'll, if it's a string, if I'm using the string, say 1, 2, 3, like that, then it's going to just convert that into an integer 1, 2, 3 because I'm asking for it. What I want to know is something actually a digit or not. So you can use something like C-type digit. It gets a little tricky. Let's take a look at hidden types. Hidden types are form elements that do not show up to the user but are in the form, and they're used for passing data from the form to the server. And you're asking, well, why would I want to do that? Well, there's often times where you need to save something or create something that you need to pass to from one page to another, and you can do that by using hidden. Let's take a look at that. Now, when you pass hidden values, you got to remember it's just an input type, so that input type is going to just pass everything as a string. It's also going to pass it into either the URL, if it's $_get, as a query string or as a post, and it's going to go through HTTP, which means that sometimes special characters get in the way. So to fix that, we typically will, if we're going to pass data that might have weird characters in it, we'll use the URL encode, which will take those special characters and turn them into things that can be passed via a URL. And then when we get that, we can do a URL decode, which will turn it back to its original characters. There's also the problem that, what if I want to pass, say, a whole array? What if I want to pass this array, like over here, I had this array of usernames. Well, what if I wanted to pass that in a hidden username and passwords? Well, you can't pass an array. I could make a string with all this stuff in it. That's a very common thing to do, so there's a function called serialize, which will take a value and encode it as a string. So let's take a look at that. Let's go back to usernames, and let's just do a var dump. Just take a look at what that says. Let's do a var dump serialize, and I'm going to serialize usernames here. Then I'm going to exit. Actually, yeah. So if I save that and I go back to my other guy here, you'll see that now my array of usernames looks like this long string of stuff, but it has all the information. It says array, 4 elements, first thing is a key, string 3 characters, mo, the next thing is a string with 7 characters, stooge 7. So never mind how it encodes this, the important thing is that it turned it into a string. Now if I'm going to pass it through a URL, like through a web page, some of these characters might be special, like these curly braces or the colons, and we don't want it to get confused. So we can not only serialize, but we can URL encode it. And if I URL encode it, save that, you'll see that now suddenly I get this string of junk, but it's something that I can pass through a URL without it getting confused. And then when I get to the other side, when I get it in the $_post or get array, I can just do the reverse. I can URL decode, then unserialize, and I'll get my array back. Okay, I'll let you try that out on your own. I don't think you need to see me do that for you. Let's try it out by using hidden input type. So let's just copy this code here. And you see what this does is it's going to take a little form, which is self-processing. Again, there's a little mistake in here. And it's going to encode some values. It's going to pass as a type hidden something called secret with a value 96, and then I'm going to take something called purchase. Let's not use purchase. Let's use our fun stuff here. Let's create. Let's see. This is HTML play again. So let's just go take this code here, like so. Take var dump. I don't like that. Let's do this like so. Okay. Paste that here. So what I want to do is I'm going to check. I'll go back to here and go get some. I'll get the usernames like that. So I'll copy that like that, and let's just take there. Okay, so right now I'm var dumping post. That's just to see what's in there. Okay, I'm defining usernames array, and I'm going to say, oh, purchase equals one thing, two thing. Oh, you know what? I didn't need to do that, so just go ahead and delete that. Sorry. Purchase is defined as one thing, two thing. Now my form is going to be a self-processing form, so I need to echo that like that. Method post or get, it doesn't matter. We'll try both. And now it has a hidden type whose name is secret, whose value is 96, so we're not going to see that. I have another hidden, which is name is purchase array, the purchase array, let's call it like that. And the value is, this little equal is a shortcut for PHP echo. Okay, that's short for that. So you can use that if it's set. I suggest you just use this echo PHP. URL encode serialized, so that's going to turn that into a one-liner thing. And now submit. Now what I want to do is see that after submitting, what is post secret, what is in post stuff. And then maybe what I'm going to do is I'm going to check that if let's say, let's give this a name, submit button. Okay, so if array key, oh, I'm not in PHP. There we go. If array key exists, what do I want to look for? The submit button. I want to see if that's in $_post. Okay, if it's in there, then what I want to do is I'm going to var dump. I'm missing a little guy there. Var dump $_purchase. Okay, excellent. Okay, good. So let's format this and run it. Okay, looking over here, I get nothing. Let's just start over again here. Take the P out. Okay, and I have nothing at first, right? So array is empty, but purchase is there. If I look at the form, there's nothing being printed but the submit form. But if I look at the form, I'm going to view page source here, and you can see I have an input type hidden with a secret 96 and input type hidden purchase array. It's this URL encoded blah 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 blah. Let's see if I can get that back. Okay, hit submit, and you can see what's in there. That's what I got in my $_post array. Oh, and it says Boolean false. What happened here? URL encode serialized purchase. I fooled myself. This is called purchase array. Shouldn't have changed that name. One more time. Saving that, resubmit. There. Now, notice when I submitted, this was when the $_post array had my URL encoded serialized thing. I hit submit, and now I unserialize URL decode, and I var dump purchase. I get the array back. So you see that we successfully passed this array through HTTP through the $_post array. And by the way, we could have easily just used get too. If I use get here, $_get, and you'll see $_get, and it will work just the same. The only thing that's different is when I hit submit like this, you see how it shows up in the URL there. And this is where it's particularly important to do a URL encode, because this would mess things up. Another little trick you could do is, regardless if you're using the get or post array, there is a kind of a shortcut. You can use the request. Now request, some people say you shouldn't use it because it's insecure, but I wouldn't worry about it. I think it's a useful thing. Now what request does is whether it's in $_get or post, it will work. So watch this. So if I submit this under there, see how it works like that? And also if I change this to post now, there. Now I'm back to the old one. And see how it disappeared? It still worked. So request will take anything out of get or request. And now, of course, what you see is that secret also. If I wanted to get secret, that was also passed in $_request quote secret, or get or post, depending on whether I use that. Okay. How does all this work? Well, information is literally passed from the client browser to the server through any one of the eGPCS. It stands for environment, E, get, G, post, P, cookies, C, S, server. So we'll talk about cookies later. We already know what get and post are. Get means that it's in the query string. Post means it's environment variables. And server is just server information. So this is how these data gets passed. Now for each eGPCS element, PHP will automatically create a super global array. And the actual name for these things are called $HTTP, let's say _post_vars. So we shorten this by taking the HTTP and the $vars out just to call it $_post for convenience. But literally that's the full name. You could use one or the other. Okay, and we've already seen that $_server has this thing called PHP self, which tells you which page is being processed, and that's already a useful thing for self-processing page. The $_server array has a whole bunch of useful things in it. You should probably take a look at it. But in particular, it has things like the server name, the request method, the query string, if there is one, the remote address, that's the IP address of the machine that's hitting your server, and of course the page being processed, plus a whole bunch of other stuff. If you want to look at it, you can just go type $varpost $_server. And presto, you're going to get a whole bunch of stuff. And there it is. Look at all that stuff. See, you get the script file name, here's the remote address, the local host, all kinds of useful things that might be handy. The two basic methods for requests from or posting from a form are get and post. Again, the difference is that get puts things into a query string. Now you can manipulate and change that query string any way you want, and that's kind of useful, as you'll see. Plus it could be bookmarked. Posts are not so easy to replace. You can modify them using the header function, but it's not that easy to do. So earlier on in the class, we actually saw that we actually looked at an HTTP request. So when you hit submit, the submit button, it actually makes an HTTP request. In fact, it actually makes a get. And we did this, get /index.html HTTP1. It says go to the web server, and at that web server ask for the file index.html from its htdocs. Transport it using HTTP 1.1 protocol. We saw that we could, now this is called the header and the body. This is the header, the get, and the body is right here. And the method, such as get or post, tells us what you want to do. So we can actually modify this using the header function. So the header function is useful for changing this, and this is nice because sometimes we want to redirect the user or add information. The thing about the header function is that this is called when this HTTP request, once it starts being processed by the server, you can't change it. So you need to make sure that you have no output before sending the headers, or otherwise you might get this warning, cannot modify headers. So the idea is that if the page is already being sent back from the server, it's too late to modify it. So depending on the configuration you have, you're not going to be able to output. You're not going to be able to change anything. So you always change your header before your output is done. So let's say how we could use this. Let's talk about header forwarding. This is really useful. Let's just take this thing here. It says header location HTTP modify. Let me go ahead and copy this and see what this does. Let's go over here, and we're going to put this at the very beginning. Okay, so there's no output at all. And I'm going to say header location HTTP, and I'm just going to say / Amazon.com. And what this is going to do is a a server header redirect. So when index.php gets called, what happens is that it's going to, instead of giving this page and processing this page, it's going to redirect. It's going to go load this page from Amazon.com instead. Let's see if that works. Okay, I resubmit, and presto, there I am. Look, at Amazon.com. So that worked. Maybe another way to do that is you can think about, let's just go back to where we were before. Let's not var dump. Let's take that out. Oops, let's just comment that out for now. And let's just say that we want to send a user to Amazon.com after hitting the submit button. So let's try this one here. So now I have the submit button. It's got the hidden data in there, and now I can send them to Amazon.com after hitting the submit. There, see, there I'm at Amazon.com. If I wanted to send it data, like you can take a look at, let's say I wanted to send Amazon.com this array of purchases, or let's say I want to send it the secret. Let's send it the secret. I could put it in a query string like this. Query string, right? I'll call it the secret equals, and I'll just send it $_ request quote secret. Let's see what this does. Okay, sending that over here. Now you see I went to Amazon.com with the secret. Okay, you could also have gotten the query string out of the $_server array and gotten that. So this is creating a query string. I could have just added the query string from $_server. So there's a lot of fun stuff you can do. These header redirects are very useful, but remember, you don't want to have any output, even if you just have a single character. So like if I just put some HTML up here and said hello, let's see if this works. I guess it still works because I have buffering set. But technically, you shouldn't be able to do that, so be careful. Okay, moving on here. Again, I said that you can, with a header redirect, there's nothing stopping you from adding a query string to the location, and this query string will be passed in. So in other words, if I want to pass in like this name and this score and this grade, let's just take a look at what that does. Let's make it go to myself. I'm going to just copy the query string so I don't have to type it again. Okay. Copy that. Go over here. And let's just make it go to myself. Oh, instead of using a header redirect, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the form action myself. I'm going to take this header redirect out. And I'm going to make the form action here. It says echo PHP server self. So I'm going to add a dot. Okay, question mark this. So this is adding a query string to this. And let's see if I do a var dump $_ get, and let's see if I get that data in there. So notice I'm doing a post with some stuff and a get with others. Okay, so when I did my, oh, here I'll do a var dump here of var dump $_ post. There. And you can see that what happens is now in the get array, Frankie98A, that was what was in the query string, so that ended up in $_ get. See, I did the post there. I mean, I var dumped it. And in the post, there's the stuff in the form. which was all that stuff that was in the input type. So you can use get and post at the same time. And again, you could just use request to get either. To deny access to a page, if you want to deny somebody, you can redirect them to a unauthorized page, and it puts up that page unauthorized. You can look at that. How do you implement back buttons? Well, back buttons, there's a bunch of different ways to do this. Again, you can use client-side or server-side processing to do this. So maybe I have a submit button or a link. It says href. So here's a link, anchor href, and that means echo, right? That just means echo. PHP echo, right? Server HTTP refer. Now HTTP refer says this is where I came from. That doesn't always work, but usually it does. And this is where I came from. So I'm making the href the link to where I came from, where the server said this page came from. So that means if I click it, it's going to go back. I could put that into a button also, right? And I also could do a JavaScript, which is using history. So I could say on-click history go -1. That means go back 1 in my history. So there's a variety of different ways to do back buttons. This is just one few of many. Sometimes you want to open a new window. So when you have a form action, it usually opens the same window. But if you change the target to say something like _blank, what it'll do is instead of opening the same window, it'll process the page in a new window, and sometimes you want that. You can also make it go in a parent window if you came from someplace. So you can see how that works. Hey, this is an interesting question. What if I have a form action? This is PHP echo, $_PHP self, and target blank. In other words, I open a new window, but it's for myself. I want you to try that and see what happens. Okay, you'd be surprised. Now I want to get to the very important topic of arrays in HTML forms. Let's go to do this. Let's take a look at our practice WOD on Smartphone Projects 5. It turns out that when you have a form, you can kind of make an array of elements that will create the unique names for you and end up as an array in your $_$ post. It's very convenient. So, for example, if I say input type text and this name is a square bracket, and these are all the same name, what it's going to do is PHP is going to automatically call this A0, A1, and A2 with the square brackets. And then the var_dump $_post, I'm going to get an array called A. Let's take a look at that by using going back to our Smartphone Products 5. Okay, so go ahead and bring up your Smartphone Products 5. Presumably, this is not it right here. Smartphone Products 5. Open up the index. Here's process order. Let's take a look at the code that does this. And what we have here is you got your array of products. And one of the things we noticed that was inconvenient was that we had to create unique names for the text fields here. We called it quantity and %d, which meant it was going to be %0, %1, %2. It was going to be, quantity 0, 1, 2 according to the array index. This was not particularly convenient to use. I had to use another loop to get it. What would happen if I did this? Let's just make it quantity square bracket like that, and then do a save. And then let's go to process order. And before I even try to use it, I'm going to just do a var_dump $_post. Okay, let's just take a look at what I get there. And now I'm going to run this. Let's make sure I'm set to run. I'm going to run that. And here we go. Let's just say I've got 1, 2, and then 3 down, or 5 down here. Hit purchase. And you notice that in the $_post array, I have an array called quantity, whose key is quantity, but now instead of quantity 0, 1, 2, it's an entire array. See, it's an array whose index is in the $_post is called quantity. It has 5 things in it: 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. In other words, PHP automatically created an array of all the quantities. Yeah, created an array of all the quantities, and it automatically called them 0, 1, 2. It automatically put the orders in there. Now, how would I use it? Well, in my order processing here, instead of calling these products, where do I have this? Instead of using post $quantity 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, what I'm going to do is all I need to do is get quantity, and then I can ask for the ith element on it. So it's a multi-dimensional array. So I'll get the quantity from the post array. That's going to be an array of the quantities. Get the ith one in that array. And presto, there it is. So why is that beneficial? For certainly a lot more convenient, because now I have I can grab the entire array of things. And I'm also not necessarily dependent on generating the names for the index for the keys for it. Let me show you what I mean. Let's just say I call these array, let's say I called that 1 through that. Now this is going to make array elements 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now this is going to still create the quantities, but what happens if I call this %d here, and %d now is I, so it's going to be quantity bracket 1, quantity bracket 2, quantity bracket 3. Watch what happens when I do this. Okay, got to go back here, hit refresh, okay, and hit 1, 2, okay, 3 like this. I'm getting an error because I have an undefined offset. Actually, let's not call that 0. Let's just call this. Let's call that. Make that back to 0 again. I don't want to go past my product arrays. Go back to 0 here, and make this quantity d. Let's call that I plus 1. There. Okay. Now let's go 2, 3, whatever, and you can see that what's happening now. My array, instead of starting at 0, is starting at 1. Why? Because I'm doing I plus 1, and I put that in the square bracket there. And I can actually make names too. I could say this is, item dot, and you'll see that going backwards here, refreshing like this, and I go like that, and you see, oh, did I do something wrong? Yes, I need to call that item, put a parenthesis there, and this needs to be %s because it's a string now, right? Okay, gotta go backwards, refresh, starting over for there. Oop. Let's call it quantity 0, 1, 2, 3. Should have called that something else. Oops. Okay, this is I had a capital S here, so I need to change that to lowercase s like that. Save that. Refresh. Put the 1, 3 there, whatever it is. Do a purchase, and you see now it's called item 1, 2, 3. So it made an associative array. So I can do whatever I want, but the thing is, it's still all in an array, which is very, very useful. So I can get everything at once by putting it into that one array, and all I have to do is grab it. So if I say var dump $_post quote quantity like that, you'll see that I get just the whole array. Okay, so we'll talk more about that. That's a very useful thing. So you could make HTML arrays, much more convenient. Again, you can make associative arrays by just putting strings in there. All right, what else do we got? Well, we could use indexed arrays to generate form elements. So one convenient thing to do, and you might want to make this a function, is you can use a for loop to create a whole bunch of input types. And now we've seen this before in the login form. Remember the login form? So let's take a look at what this is. Let's do a copy, and this is another useful thing. Probably want to undo all this stuff, and let's go back to our H validation play. That sounds good. Going back to validation play here. Okay, so I have a, I'm going to echo PHP self, so I'm going to be a self-processing page using the post method. I'm going to var dump my post, and now I said size equals 10. I'm going to create a bunch of checkboxes whose name is check I, and let's see what happens when I create that and do this. You see I've got a bunch of checkboxes. Look, boom, 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 and I can submit. Oops, I should have submitted to myself. I have smart quotes there. You see that? I got to replace those with straight quotes. Dang. There. Okay, saving that, refreshing, and going backwards. Let's refresh this. Boom, 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 boom. I had the wrong quotes, right? Now I can see, look, when I generated these bunch of checkboxes, I checked those ones. I got an array called that was indexed by check and $_post. It shows me all the elements that were checked, 0, 4, 7, and 8. Okay, because that's the array element on check. Okay, so check has an array whose index. If I wanted to give it a name, I could put names on there too. Notice I could just easily extend this by changing it to 100. And look, I got 100 different ones. And I could see get an array of all the different ones were checked. So it's useful for getting a whole bunch of different selections. How do you make HTML forms sticky? So one of the things that's really annoying when a user enters something is when they make a mistake, the data that they entered before vanished. They want to see where they made a mistake and they want to be able to fix it without having to retype everything. So the way to do that, to make HTML forms sticky, is you just reprint the value of that you get in the post. So let's take a look. Again, I've got smart quotes here, so I need to take that out like that. And this should be echo like that. And take that smart quote out like that. And oh geez, I just have too many smart quotes. I should just do a find and replace, huh? Boom. And then boom. Okay, let's save that. So what's going on here is I have a self-processing form again, and I have a text box, and I'm going to make my value PHP. Okay. I open up PHP, and it says if this value is set, I want to echo what it is. And the upshot of it is that when I submit something, XXX, and I hit submit, it stays around. So what would happen if I didn't have this? I'm going to take this value part out. Let's take this value part out here. Just cut that like that. Save it. Okay, and now if I put XXXX, hit submit, it redraws the page. And when it redraws the page, you see there is no value being put back into the text box from the post, and so it disappears, which could be extremely irritating to the user. So if you want to make it sticky, the trick is set the value equal to the whatever is the name. So this is called text box, so it's called $_text box, and see if there's anything in there. And I check to see if it's set, because if it's not set, I don't want to get a warning that says, hey, you're trying to access an element that doesn't exist. A shortcut to that is you could just do this. Just echo $_post like that, and I don't need the if. I could just do this. And the reason why I can get away with this is because there's nothing critical about this being set or not. I don't really need to know. So I could just I could just avoid the warnings. Let's see, why isn't this working? Echo $_post text box, name text box. This should have worked. Oh, because I need to refresh. Okay, let's start over again. P, it had the old form in there. So here, XXXX, submit, and ooh, disappears. What did I do wrong? I don't know what I did wrong, but now it seems to be working. Put a DFF there like that. And let's just take the P out. Try this again. Start fresh. Okay, seems to work. Okay, so again, the @ sign just suppresses the warning. You can use it if you don't have to depend on this value being set for anything. And the sticky thing gets a little trickier with other more complicated elements. But here's a more complicated example of using hidden to pass data through a page. So in other words, I want to start with one page with some information, go to another page, like a login page, and then maybe go to another page and take that information from the first page. This is going to be relevant like when one of the assignments, assignment 2, is going to ask you to get some things from a user, have them log in, and then process the things that they requested. So let's start with a thing called select quantities PHP. I'm going to actually just put these in index form. Whoops, index form. So I'm going to copy that. So I'm just going to leave this here like that. Save that. Okay, reform. And there's my things that it's asking for, quantity 1 and quantity 2. All right, now what I want to do is have a login.php. So I'll create a new file called PHP file called login, and I'm going to copy this code here like so. Okay, save that. No smart quotes or anything weird. Okay, good. And then I'm going to create another one called invoice. So I'll create a new file here called invoice, and finish that and paste that there. Actually, that should paste that there. Okay, good. No smart quotes. Fine. So I'm going to start out at index. Yep. So I'm going to run that. And I'm going to say 1 and 2, or 1 and 2 here. I'm going to hit submit. Now this is going to go to login.php. And now I'm asking for a username and password. So now it's asking for a username and password, and it's putting the quantity 1 and 2 into hidden variables or hidden HTML form elements. So they don't show up here, but you can see if I view the page source, they're still here. See, input to hidden value 1, 2. So this came from the post from the original page, and now I'm putting them into a new form as hiddens, and that way I'll be able to pass them. So I'll put dport pass, hit submit, and then I go to the last one. I don't want to save my password. Quantity 1 is 1, quantity 2 is 2. So I successfully passed it. See, quantity 1, quantity 2, because they were in the hidden. I also happen to also have the username and password stuff too. But you notice that this login here, I could just make it keep checking login, 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 and then it did a header redirect when the login was correct, or in this case it just says login successful equals true. In other words, I checked with my login, I validated the login, and it redirected it. Okay, but I put it into the query string. I put the quantities from 1 and 2 here. I put them into a query string. You see how they are here? So that I could pass them and stay on this form. I could stay on this form here until our login is successful. So this code here may be useful for assignment 2 when you get to it. Yeah, this is just checking to see if a username and password is okay. And let's take a look at what this is. Oh, here's an advanced HTML processing a checkbox array. So this is some code here that you might take a look at to show you how to process a bunch of checkboxes. So you can, if I want to see which checkboxes were selected, notice that it's generating a bunch of selections, and it gets those selections, right? What those as an array, and it goes through them and finds which ones had on. And if they had on, then I can go say which one's selected. Let's take a look at this because this will give us some instructions on how a curious thing about checkboxes or radio boxes. So let's go back to index here, and let's just make it like this, and let's take a look. So first, if I see if my array key exists A in post, and if it does, I see which one's selected. Otherwise, I print this form, right, with a bunch of checkboxes. So let's try that out. I'm gonna quit that. I'm gonna start there like that. Okay, so you get checkbox 1, 2, 3, boom, 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 hit submit, and it says I selected box 0, 2, and 3, and I got that because I was looking for which ones were on. Incidentally, if I do a var dump, okay, do a var dump $_post here, you could see that actually only the ones I selected were on. So I don't even need to know this. I just actually could get the array. So instead of doing checking to see if they're on or not, I can just go, I know which ones were selected because they're just the keys in the array. The ones that weren't selected actually don't even show up. If I wanted to know which ones were not selected, then I need to go through all possible 5 and then check to see if they're on or not. Interestingly enough, you might wonder why is this on like this? Because that's the default value for a checkbox, but there's nothing stopping you from making the value whatever you like. So let's just make the value say $I here. And now if I save this here, refresh here, let's go back, refresh, and you can see that I'm no longer getting the value of on, I'm getting the value of the checkbox 0, 1, and 4, or whatever I set the value for. So it defaults to on. Once again, it only passes the value in the array if it was selected. If it's not selected, you don't get it, which can pose problems sometimes. Okay, almost done here. To put errors in their place, you might want to take that global errors array that we talked about earlier. So I might have something called check password that checks to see whether I have an error in a password. And you have an errors array which has keys and values about the errors. So you could just look to see if I want to print an error in the place where password was entered. You can just check to see if it has an error, and if it does, print it there. So let's see what this does. Let's try this out, putting errors in its place. Let's go back here and refresh. Okay, this is looking for a says check password. I need to get let's go get a form for this. Is probably on the next page. There it is. So here's my form action here. So I'm going to go get this code on the next page and copy this, put that there like so. Okay, and now you'll see how this works. Let's see if I don't have smart quotes like that. Refresh. So I'm asking for the username and password, and right now it's checking. It's going to say if password, see, check password is ensure the password is the right size. So this one says minimum length is 3, maximum length is 10. So what if I put, like this, and I put a password of 1? So I'm entering my password, and you'll notice that that's not correct. It says Reiki exists form. Check user password Okay, so looks like there's a little error in here. I found it, and if you look over here, it says array key exists form data. There's a space. You got to take that space out. I'll repost this without that, but that's a little error. And you can see if I put a username and password, it says enter a longer password. If I put a long enough password in there, it's not going to put it. But you see how did it know how to put that error right here? What it did is it check the password by using the function check password, which created a global array of errors, right? Either too long or too short. So I can make this too long, for example. And when I get down to the form, I'm just looking to see if errors password short or password long is set, then print out the error. So this allows me to put the error in its place if it exists. Okay, so again, there's a little bit of a boo-boo here. I think that's in this guy right here. Let's just fix that. That's the one right there. Okay, save that. All right, so that's putting errors into place. That's all I have for you. We'll see you in class, and we will go through questions about